Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are located, and welcome to the PACE Gryphon Networks webinar, 3 Ways to Accelerate ROI on Your CRM Investment. My name is Chris Herrick, and I'm the SVP of PACE and will be your moderator today. Now, as we get ready to begin, there are just a couple of housekeeping items I'd like to inform you of. First of all, the webinar is being recorded. A copy of the slides will be sent to you after the webinar is over today. The webinar will be available for playback on the PACE website in just a couple of days, and all of your lines are on mute to avoid background noise. We will be taking questions at the end of Eric's presentation, so if you do have a question, please be sure to type it in the chat box in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, and we will get to as many of those questions as we can as possible. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today's webinar. As Senior Vice President and GM, Eric Hasbanian leads Gryphon sales, business development, and marketing teams. He brings over 17 years of experience with performance optimization and sales intelligence solutions. With Gryphon, Eric works with Fortune 500 clients to help drive sales and marketing effectiveness by harnessing the power of big data and transforming it into specific and practical management insight. Eric earned an MBA from F.W. Olin School of Business at Babson College and a BA from Boston College. So with that, Eric, I'm going to turn the webinar over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate that, and I appreciate everybody who took the time to attend this webinar. I promise it will move along fairly quickly, and hopefully it will be informative for you. So, starting off with the obvious question, within my role here at Gryphon, we talk to many clients, large and small, and nearly every single one of them has a CRM system. CRM is clearly become a ubiquitous technology, at the risk of stating the obvious. But we've seen some real opportunities within the marketplace that would help make CRM a quicker value to companies that are either replacing the CRM they currently have for something presumably better, or actually acquiring a CRM for the first time. If you can believe, a lot of very large companies still have disparate systems. And when you look at what CRM is, the idea is dead on, right? A centralized repository and a series of processes that are designed to aggregate information around your customers and your selling activity and your service activity, so that there's a single source of information that everybody in the company can go to in order to identify how to better service customers and how to better grow the business. And that's a very noble cause, and it's the reason why everybody has CRM, because that's usually the ultimate goal. We see a lot of companies that acquire CRM with the idea that it's going to do a lot more than really CRM is designed to do, because you get caught up. There's a lot of marketing information. There's a lot of dollars being spent on CRM initiatives. There's a lot of dollars being spent by the CRM vendors around all the great things that can happen when you deploy a new CRM system. There's a lot to that, but there are some caveats. And in this discussion that we're having today is really designed on finding ways to make sure that you are getting that return on investment that you intend to get, that you use to justify the budget dollars that went into buying CRM or upgrading CRM. And we believe, and we've talked to a number of our clients that have really validated that this approach makes a tremendous amount of sense, whether you have a CRM or whether you're considering a CRM. You know, and if you look at the average, the average sales operations executive or sales executive, naturally there's a desire to bring all your customer information together, bring all your sales activity together into one system, preferably online, so they can access it from anywhere. So you have Mike here in the simple example. Simple needs. He wants to consolidate his information into one hub and get out of this methodology where you have all information in 3 or 4 different places. He goes and gets budget. Usually the budget is identified by having conversations with a few vendors of CRM and getting a rough feel for how much it would cost. And once they identify the budget, they start getting serious, and then the CRM rep gets into talking about the costs, of really buying the system that you need, all the things that you really didn't know when you identified that budget a few months earlier, and then to offset that big cost, they talk about the bigger return on investment for making that purchase. A couple little numbers items that I think would be helpful here. A lot of money being spent on CRM. It seems to grow consistently, $20 billion on average every year on CRM. That's not all that surprising. The growth is still 6%. So you look at the penetration rate of CRM, and it's pretty high, but still 6% is not insignificant. But that third one is really interesting as well. 2 out of 5 deals forecasted within CRM actually closes. So you think about this concept of aggregating and consolidating data, that seems like a fairly low number. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Aberdeen did a study that talked about why that is, why the accuracy within CRM isn't where it really should be, especially in when you look at it in terms of the investment that you have to make to buy into the game. And that first bar is pretty significant. Insufficient data on current deals in the pipe entered by reps. Now, if there is, from a sales perspective, if there is one central objective of CRM and adopting CRM, I would think that would be it. You go down the list, 44% is a pretty healthy number. Overconfidence, that's happens sometimes. Lack of manager enforcement, that's been a real challenge for clients. They seem to buy CRM and think everyone is just automatically going to start using it. And as a sales manager myself, I know that that's not the case. There's a lot of talk around accountability, making sure the reps know what their goals are and they follow through on those goals. Again, essential to CRM deployments regardless. But I think the real key takeaway here from this study and the others that we've been through is that the data itself, incomplete set of data, is the number one reason why not only salespeople give up on their CRM because it's becoming more of a chore. It's like, the cops want to go out onto the street and bust bad guys. They don't want to go back to the office and fill the paperwork out at the end of the day. Sales folks are no different. They want to work deals. They want to strategize. They want to talk to customers. They don't want to come home and run the paperwork at the end of the day. And in many ways, that's what CRM has become for a lot of reps and a lot of managers. There's a large percentage of time that goes into keeping CRM, quote unquote, up to date. And why does it have to be up to date? It has to be up to date because the data that they're running reports, in many cases the data they're running their forecasts, and their budget and planning and spending of most companies has something to do with the forecasted revenue that's going to come in. So it's very important. It's essential to the business, and it takes a lot of time, as this slide will indicate. However, you go back to that accuracy component, and it's a challenge. So when it comes to actual accuracy of data around activities that your sales force is engaged in, it is challenging. The fact of the matter is reps, agents, whatever you want to call them, are using all sorts of different devices to market to customers, to market to consumers, to prospect. They're using their mobile phones. They're in a branch office. They're calling through CRM in many cases. They're working from home. There's a tremendous amount of focus around this BYOD concept, and the goal of making sure that reps have the flexibility to do their job from anywhere is a must-have in the 21st century here. It's the flexibility is something that good sales reps walk in the door expecting and taking for granted. And nobody blames them. The challenge becomes when they are using all these different devices to call and talk to customers and setting up online presences and social media, etc. As a manager, you have very little visibility to that activity because you're not necessarily issuing them phones, and they're not in an office calling through a single phone system, working from a single set of lockdown PCs on a single carrier network. They could be talking from any device. The old boiler rooms of the 1990s, everything was locked down and controlled in many call centers still today. However, the whole definition of the call center, of the contact center, is redefined now. It's really more of a function, not exactly a place anymore. Because any way that any of your agents and your people can talk to customers, by whatever means, the activity they generate is an asset that you're either using, applying and using, or you're squandering. And you have to be able to do that in spite of the fact that we live in a BYOD world. But what about big data? I mean, everybody talks about it. It's a nonstop theme within the technology world. Every morning I open my Twitter feed and I'm just inundated with the potential of big data. What I've found from a practical perspective is, yes, there is tremendous amount of potential with big data. However, you need the ability and the tools to extract and get from big data what you need to do your job as a manager. And that may be sourced from a big, gigantic data set, but how it's served up to you as a manager has to be narrow, it has to be simple and clear and concise. Otherwise, your big data looks more like this. You know, you have the IT folks dumping this information on you. You don't have the ability to process it. It could be a big pile of dirt, for all you know, because you can't use all that big data because you don't have the time to sift through it. You know, if you're recording your reps' calls, how much time do you have to spend a day out of every week pouring through all that big data in order to find one or two meaningful insights? So the big CRM reality check is this. Without accurate, comprehensive activity data, you're not going to get ROI. You're not going to get ROI from your CRM. You're certainly not going to get the ROI that you expect and you were promised by the CRM vendor in a pre-sales environment. That is a significant differentiator, and for our clients, it happens time and time again. When a senior executive rubber stamps a CRM deployment or a CRM funding, they're expecting returns. They're expecting returns as quickly or more quickly than what's projected. But without an accurate, comprehensive set of activity, look into it via CRM, you're not going to get that ROI. It's going to be a mess. So CRM's value falls short really in the idea behind the second bar here, insufficient knowledge and lead conversion, the third bar. The fact of the matter is when you distribute a lead, what happens with that lead? When does your rep call on it the first time? When do they call on it the second time? How many times do they call on it before they give up, throw it in the trash, and then go to their manager and ask for more leads? Happens time and time again. CRM should be able to tell you that information. You should be able to dial that right up. Unfortunately, because you're not getting accurate activity, you can't really look and be that precise about how many calls it takes to set an appointment or convert a lead, because the data, if you're lucky, the data is input by the rep at the end of the day, but more likely at the end of the week, and they're putting in subjective, very cursory information because they're doing it manually. And at the end of the day, you don't know what activities are leading to what results. So where does CRM ROI come from? And I put this together based on a number of different pieces of analysis that have been done. The centralized information source, that's good. That's definitely something. There is value there. The fact that CRM is always available via the web, however you consume it, even on your mobile, that's also useful. It's important. The ability to forecast and report more effectively and be more customized based on how you report and forecast, that's also good. And also standardizing a way you report and forecast, that's a big one. But at the end of the day, CRM is designed to help improve the effectiveness of your sales process. And that really is the beginning and the end of where the biggest bang you're going to get for your buck is if you can drive better sales practices, better sales hiring, better conversion rates, better upsell, better cross-sell. That's the real power pellet when it comes to finding that ROI with a new CRM deployment. And if you're not looking at how this tool is going to help me improve my effectiveness from a selling perspective in my service, then you're missing the boat significantly, because these first three items, they're good, but they're not going to do the job themselves. And unfortunately, CRM itself is not going to do it on its own. We look at the sales activity, the activities that your sales agents are conducting in efforts to grow, support, and bring in new revenue streams. Things like call attempts, conversation length, frequency of dial, like we spoke about a moment ago. Conversion ratios, how many calls does it take to set one appointment? What is the best average talk time for the outcome that you're looking for? These things are predictive of the opportunities that are going to reside in your CRM. And if you can get your CRM to get there, you can configure your CRM to get your arms around all that information and then look at it in a way that makes sense, that allows you to really see what activities drive which results. Now you're talking about really supersizing the effectiveness of that CRM system at a level that CRM on its own just simply can't do. So this was originally called 3 Things You Can Do to Accelerate CRM ROI. I changed it at the 11th hour to the 4 C's of CRM ROI, not only because I love alliteration, but also because it just happened to lay itself out like that, and I thought it was clever. Maybe, maybe not. So the first C when it comes to accelerating CRM ROI is capture the selling activity. So the first thing you want to do, and this happens in many cases even before you deploy the CRM, is you find a way to automatically capture activity that your reps are engaging in the field. For phone calls, it means just basically automatically logging that information, identifying who they called, how long the call was, outcomes, what happened on the call, and doing it in a way that doesn't really care how the call is made, where office they were in, what carrier network they were using. There are tools out there that exist now that allow you to capture that data automatically and then log it into CRM also automatically, so that you're eliminating a big problem that your reps have with CRM, which is spending time back at the office on the paperwork. And that does 2 things. 1, you get a better comprehensive set of data, and then 2, you free up the rep from doing manual process that's just taking them away from more productive ventures. You want to automatically log your calls. You want to eliminate these subjective updates that you're begging your team to engage in once a week or fill out the Excel spreadsheet, you name it. You get much better accuracy. You're going to get a real objective understanding as to what activities are being engaged in, and you don't have the spin that the rep might put on it, and you don't have the dropped activity that they just forget to put into CRM. And then mobility apps. You got to be able to, no matter what your strategy is around BYOD or where they can make calls, you got to make it easy. You got to make it almost invisible to the reps what's happening in the activity that's being captured and automatically logged. Because what happens is there is a visibility gap between what the rep is doing out there and what the manager can see. CRM, in theory, is supposed to fix that, but without a way to automatically capture that activity and drop it in automatically, a manager is not going to get that from. There's still going to be that question mark. There's still going to be that uncertainty, and then you're back to relying on your gut to make your decisions. And that's really one of the value props of CRM, is moving away from that. The second thing you want to do, so now you're capturing the activity, whether it's in CRM at the beginning or not. Eventually it's getting in there and it's automated. So the reps are freed up from doing their paperwork. You as a manager have a much better understanding as to what's happening out there in the field. How many calls are they making? How long are they lasting? What's the conversion rate? Time, these sorts of things. The next C is correlate the activities now that you can rely on, the accurate activities, with the outcomes that result in them. So if Larry's making 20 calls a day and he's setting 5 appointments, wow, that's something that's really unique, and that's it's much higher than the rest of Larry's teammates. Let's find out and see what other correlations we have, like how long are they on the phone? Are they talking too long? Are they talking too short? Because what Larry's doing is something that may be useful to other folks. And it's one thing to have all the data in one place. It's another thing to make that correlation and identify both the desirable behaviors that are mapped to the desirable outcomes, as well as the less desirable behaviors and the less desirable outcomes. Because there's real intelligence that happens when you go through this process. When you can rely on an accurate, comprehensive set of the data, you can then begin to do some real correlation. And it's not real data science stuff. It is common sense sales key performance indicators, not a beautiful mind type stuff. And what correlation does, it allows you to say, okay, what is the benchmark that we are going to establish for my team? How many calls do I want them making? And it's built on how many appointments you want them setting, and the appointment setting percentage, and the conversion from there versus $1 of revenue. Now you can manage the activity instead of just running a pipeline report, looking at what's projected, and then putting your own subjective weight factor against it, because You have your gut feeling about each of the deals and each of the reps. This allows you to apply accurate intelligence to that process. The third C, and this is a really important one, commit and communicate this new standard. So you are capturing the activity. It's very accurate and it's totally complete. You are correlating and identifying, all right, what does success look like from an activity standpoint? Not even talking about the pipeline of deals and who's got what revenue scheduled to close when. We're talking about the activities that are predictive of those deals. All right, identify what those behaviors are, establish a standard, commit to that standard from the top down. This is a really important piece of it. When you start going down the road of adopting a CRM, there definitely needs to be a top-down management commitment that is communicated across the board, because that's how you drive the adoption of all the reps. That's why you don't linger at around 50 or 60% utilization with your CRM, because no one's really enforcing it. Managers just don't have the time. It's not a priority for them, so it's by extension not a priority for the reps, because, again, the data usually isn't accurate. When it's accurate, suddenly commitment is paramount to seeing this ROI through. And then communicate that standard to everyone within the organization. You walk in the door, the expectation is you're going to be using this CRM, you're going to be making 20 calls a day, your expectation is 2 appointments per day, whatever it is. Now it's not based on your opinion and what you think you should do, it's based on data that you have, that you've correlated, and now you're communicating it to everybody. And also that last bullet's important. Be prepared to enforce that standard. It's one thing to say, all right, guys, here's the standard, and then everybody just maybe follows it for a week, and then it just dissipates and it never really gets revisited, like so many big initiatives at large companies. You have to enforce that standard. You have to identify when it's being exceeded and when it's being underperformed, and then make those adjustments as a manager. But you're not doing it just because you think or you feel. You're doing it because you know, because CRM now gives you the ability to actually see what's happening. And the fourth C is continuous improvement. This idea that, all right, we're going to start capturing everybody's activity, and then we're going to take a look at and see what it tells us, what type of data we need, what type of goals we should be setting, and then we're going to get everybody's buy-in that these are your objectives, this is your call per day, this is your calls per week. We're going to even tie it to compensation, because we know these guys want to get paid, and tying their comp to a KPI such as activity has been proven time and time again to be a particularly effective way to drive overall performance at the rep level. You think you're doing it all? You're not. It has to be something that you continue to evolve with. It's not something that's an event. Hey, we're going to do it, we're going to unveil it, and we're going to say, go do it. We're going to say, okay, every quarter we are going to look, we're going to adjust, we're going to change, we're going to modify, and over time, what's going to happen? That benchmark that you set originally, you can now raise it, maybe 3% or 5%, and then monitor what happens when you do that. What is the impact to the top line of the revenue? What is the impact to the reps that were sort of on the bubble of being successful or not? Do they go up, do they go down, or do they stay right where they are? All that information is now possible for that first C. Because you're capturing the activity and it's now accurate and comprehensive, now you can make these types of decisions, and over time build a culture of continuous improvement throughout the selling organization, upgrade your effectiveness per rep, identify the behaviors of the top performers, and promote them for everybody so that even a new rep coming in the door will be able to get a real quantifiable understanding of what success looks like based on actual numbers, based on activities and outcomes. And then finally, you get a much better chance of being able to chop dead wood fast, as they say, meaning identify who might not be able to cut it, identify the rep that's, since they've been here, haven't ever made 20 calls per day and don't intend to, or you find out the 20 calls they are making are to their mother or to some dead number, meaning they're gaming the system. Identify those folks a heck of a lot quicker than you would just counting on what they decide to put into CRM themselves. So it's very important to continually evaluate and update your system to support the new insights that you're being given by your CRM system. So once a sales manager can rely on CRM and they know that the data that lives in there is accurate and is complete, then you start looking at the real fun stuff around the standards. You can build a training and coaching program that is designed to not only use, hey, Larry, you're doing all right, but you really got to step it up this month, but use their information from their peers to compare them and have a standard to which they know that they have to be measured from the day they walk in the door. CRM can do that, and it can be a predictive tool, and there are a lot of predictive services out there that'll take all your CRM data and project out in all sorts of cool charts and graphs. The problem is the underlying data that builds those charts and graphs is most often subjective and most often inaccurate. So it goes back to that original stat that we showed earlier, which is data accuracy, closed deal percentage of 2 of 5, and the inaccuracy of CRM is at the heart of why CRM projects don't see the ROI that they are promised out of the gate. CRM on its own cannot do it. CRM is nothing more than a shell unless you put in mechanisms to capture and manage the activity that leads to opportunity, that leads to revenue down the road and revenue growth. So 4 C's, bottom line. You want to get early adoption of activity management tools that automate, that capture information from any device, anywhere that a rep can be doing work. You got to have the buy-in and commitment from management that this is a job requirement to use CRM, and root out people who aren't using it as quickly as you possibly can, as early as you can, because that behavior has to change. You want to make sure the goals and objectives are driven by data and communicated clearly and consistently across the organization, and always be prepared and have a systematic way to continually revise and update your goals and your assumptions and your metrics and your objectives, because as you start getting that first baseline, you're going to see a lot of stuff because it's now accurate and it's complete, and you're going to be able to do things now you would never dream possible around improving the organizational effectiveness, sales effectiveness, and then ultimately improving your revenue per rep, and also improving your hiring process, your coaching process, and overall your employee and sales development process. That's the way you take the concept of big data, which is grabbing all your sales activity and dumping it into a CRM. That's how you take big data and turn it into sort of narrow data focused on practical insights to help you run your sales operation better. So I believe that's it. I'm going to click off onto the concluding slide with some links here. There's some white papers and infographics that are available at our website, gryphonnetworks.com. Love to turn it over and see if there's any questions that I can answer.
Okay, Eric, thank you so much for that great presentation. I will remind everyone that if you have a question, please do type it in the chat box that's located in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. But we do have some questions that I'm going to go ahead and ask you, Eric. Could you explain a bit more about how to capture sales activity from mobile telephones that are personal cell phones?
Sure, and that's a question that comes up a lot because there's the majority of the Gryphon's clients, as well as companies that we've dealt with in the past, the majority of them no longer issue a lockdown cell phone to their reps out in the field. They let them bring their own phones, and they still, in many cases, have relied on manually entering that activity, if at all. But there are a lot of tools out there now, whether it's a cloud dialing platform that has a mobile extension app, or there are a lot of apps out there now that can basically take the place of your iPhone's native dialer, and you use it and it interact with it the exact same way you do with your normal dialer. The difference is you do it for your work-related calls, and there's some certification that can happen. All the activity is captured. I mean, they even have tools now that can record calls from a mobile app that will then drop that automatically back into your CRM system, all really without changing the process of the sales reps one iota. They're just using a different app to dial their work calls than they do their personal calls. And when I get questions around how intrusive is it for the rep in their personal phone, the reality is most of them prefer it because it's an easy way to segment their personal life and their personal activity from their work life and their work activity. You don't have to lock down the phone. You can just literally make an easy way to segment work traffic, and you can even have that telco centrally billed to the company for the work traffic, and it's done in a very seamless, simple way. So there's a few different options out there, but the apps are the ones that I've seen have been the most seamless and effective.
Perfect. Thank you. The second question that we have is, do you have any specific recommendations on how to ensure agents buy into being recorded and having their data tracked? Isn't that something like Big Brother, I guess you could say?
Yes, it's at some point with most of our clients, I think we get that question asked around the reps and their sensitivities to being quote unquote tracked, and it is an issue. It's usually an issue very early on, and it does come down to management. When management really understands the asset that they're squandering by not being able to harness the outbound activity that a rep's conducting on the company's behalf, even though they may be paying them a salary or paying them bonuses, et cetera, it becomes pretty clear that asset does belong to the company if they can harness it. And you got to be very clear as a manager that this is what is expected of you. There aren't exceptions. It's not like, we're going to use them for these guys here because they're new, but my senior guys are killers, and we're not going to require it from them. If you start getting into that, these folks, those folks things, it really starts to erode. It has to be uniform, and it has to be something that managers don't make something that they want their folks to do. It's a job requirement, and when they do, suddenly anybody who's really strenuously objecting, that's another behavioral thing that you might want to look into because at the end of the day, most people recognize, this is good for the company. My activity is my company's asset, and they typically fall in line, especially when they start seeing, okay, now my successes can be promoted, whereas before no one would even know about, how hard I'm working or how well I'm doing. This gives the good guys the ability to benchmark that, and that's always very attractive for them.
That makes absolute sense. So the last question that I have for you, Eric, is do you have any recommendations for increasing CRM utilization across your sales organization?
CRM utilization, gosh, it's with every company we talk to, it's a challenge. CRM is incredibly well penetrated, but almost every company struggles with reps hovering around 60% adoption. And a lot of that does go right back to, how much of a priority is it for the company? It becomes a paramount priority when the budget is identified and when the check is written. However, after that happens, in many cases, the urgency moves on to other things, and when that happens, there's not a whole lot of follow-up. Techniques like saying, if I don't see it within CRM, it didn't happen, and tying a financial incentive to making sure that information is updated and that a rep is using their CRM is absolutely the best practice for driving CRM adoption. But at the same time, looking at it from the rep's perspective, it can't be a big pain. You got to automate what you can. There's so much that now can be done automatically by the rep's activity that there's no reason why you should have them going in there and logging their phone calls or going in and uploading emails out of Outlook into their contact records or their opportunity records. That should all be happening automatically. And just as soon as you begin thinking about deploying a CRM or evaluating CRM, you should at the same time be looking at, all right, what tools are we going to be deploying with CRM to automate that activity capture, because then it's a win for everybody. Your reps get simplicity. They get the value of CRM for their purposes. Manager gets an accurate, clean, comprehensive set of their data, and executives get actual, bankable forecasting information. And you also, by the way, have a way to now predict tomorrow's opportunities and the day after tomorrow's revenue by today's activity and managing to that standard. So it really does come down to making it a priority, communicating consistently, and I always say having some financial tie-in to ensure that the reps are using the CRM.
Fantastic. Well, that was the last question. So again, I want to thank you all for attending today's webinar, and Eric, thanking you again as well for the great information that you provided today. As I stated earlier, the slides will be sent to you later today, and the full recording of the webinar will be on the PACE website in a few days. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind you all to attend the 2015 PACE TCPA Washington Summit that's being held September 27th through the 29th at the W Hotel in Washington, D.C. Early bird registration is still available until July 31st, so please do register early as this is sure to be a sold-out event. Additional information about the summit can be found on the PACE website, which is www.paceassociation.com. Again, thank you all for attending today. I wish you a great rest of the day and a great weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.